Okay, it is 10:05 my time. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm happy to host this webinar on EVACES. Dr. Derek Skolnik will give us a presentation. Just before he gets to his technical presentation, I want to say a few words about EVACES. EVACES stands for Experimental Vibration Analysis for Civil Engineering Structures. It's an international association, serves as a platform for professional researcher and organizations who do experimental vibration applications specific to civil engineering structures. Some of the activities, EVACES is known for the International Conference EVACES. It tries to foster collaboration between academia and industry, specific application to civil engineering. It supports dissemination activities. They have proceedings, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel, which hosts all these webinars that you will see today, and also give awards and prizes to excellent scientists and researchers in the corresponding field that EVACES supports. The board includes the president, Professor Alvaro Cunha at the University of Porto, Filippo Ubertini, University of Perugia, Maria Pina Limongelli, Politecnico di Milano, Ji Dong, Saitama University, and Pierfrancesco Giordano, Politecnico di Milano. EVACES does have a website that has all the information that you need about the society. There is a QR code you can get, or just you can go Google EVACES, it comes up. You can see the news, events, and the latest conference, which will be EVACES 2027 in Perugia. They do have a LinkedIn page. I recommend all of you to join that, follow that. YouTube channel shows all of the videos, including the one today that Derek will go over, and the proceedings of the conferences that come as Springer books. The next conference will be in Perugia, Italy. Again, if you go on the website, there is all the information that you need to find. Conference chairs are Filippo Ubertini, Carmelo Gentile, and Antonino Pirotta. You can also try to join the scientific membership, and you can see the existing scientific committee members at the EVACES. So this webinar is actually the first one given by our industry partners. So Derek is part of Kinemetrics. As you can see, this organization, EVACES, is partnership between academia and industry. You can see some of the industry partners here. And I think this is my last slide, and then I will pass it to Derek. Derek is a program manager of earthquake engineering at Kinemetrics, Inc. He leads a multidisciplinary team of engineers in earthquake and structural monitoring projects. His work spans the instrumentation of iconic high-rise towers, hospitals, industrial facilities, and government installations worldwide. He holds a PhD in civil engineering from UCLA and is a licensed professional engineer in California. The last comment I have, and then I will pass it to Derek, is that if you have questions, do not type it in the chat. If you go on the top of your Zoom, there is more 3 dots, and then there is a box called Q&A. Please type your questions in Q&A so it remains there and we can refer to those later. Would be easier to manage. So again, your questions, you can type them anytime you want, but we get to the questions after Derek's presentation. His presentation is about 45 minutes, and then we will have about 15 minutes to go over the questions after that. With that, I will pass it to Derek.
Thank you, Babak. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see that, okay?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. Well, good morning or good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know this is a very international crowd. Thank you for taking time to spend with us, and I hope this is informative and you enjoy this presentation, which I will enjoy giving. Uh, it's all about strong motion monitoring. And let's, without further ado, just dive in if I can here. So here is my talk's agenda. I'll have a few, 2 or 3 slides about the company, as I always do, and then jump into the first core section, which is all about strong motion, the history of it, where it comes from, where it's enforced, and where we are today. And then I'll dive into some case studies and different types of case studies. And I have lots of case studies, so we can go through not all of them, but as many as we have time for. And then, of course, Q&A. So Kinemetrics is headquartered in Pasadena, California, which I noticed has never hosted EVACES conference. And the last one in the US was in San Diego. And I know it's very difficult to travel to the US these days, but hopefully that changes soon. And we would welcome Pasadena would be a great location for the next for the EVACES. Um, there's a long list of accolades here that I won't go through uh, all of them, but just highlight a few. Uh, we were founded in 1969 with the invention of the SMA-1, which you'll hear about if you don't know already. Uh, we were acquired by Oyo Corporation of Japan in 1991. That's our parent company. We're all over the world with 40 plus representatives, lots of patents, lots of instruments. Um, and probably skip all the way down to the bottom there. We have provided about 85% of the world's nuclear power plants and also have now spread out through the solar system as we installed the seismometer on Mars during the 2008 InSight mission. And also just showing some of the how we organize our markets between seismology and earthquake engineering. Okay, so fundamentally, we are a manufacturing company of seismic instrumentation, accelerometers, seismometers, digitizers, and related software. But we then integrate this instrumentation with third-party technologies to deliver custom systems that are tailored to specific projects. And that's the group that I belong in. And when those systems sort of evolve or become repeatable across many projects, we call them solutions, repeatable solutions. And when multiple solutions uh, get integrated with consulting services and whatnot, and they come together to sort of solve a problem for a specific market, that's what we call platform. And the reason why I'm saying that is because here's my last slide about the company is where we're at today is we have management platforms. And these are, again, solutions that have evolved from systems and, and based on core technology. You can see here we have very application specific for bridges or dams or nuclear energy. And today we'll focus mostly on Oasis Plus, as that is something that I have most experience with, but structural or strong motion really does touch all five, all six, believe it or not. Okay, so that's about us. Now let's dive into the world of strong motion. I'll have a few slides on the history because I think it's very interesting where it comes from and how it came into the building code and then to ultimately the large public global networks that we know of today. And throughout, I'll have some detours that I think are very interesting, such as, the disruptive potential of low-cost MEMS-based accelerometers and also strong motion and fire, how the intersection of that. So the history of strong motion or engineering seismology altogether in the US traces back to the 1929 World Engineering Congress in Tokyo, which was held in the aftermath of the Great Kanto earthquake, 1923. US engineers went to this Congress and recognized the critical need for near source recordings that was common in Japan, but not in the US. And they saw how much the Japanese were learning from the strong motion recordings. So in 1931, the US Coast and Geodetic Survey, let me see if I can get my laser here. The USC&GS established what is the first strong motion instrumentation program in the US. And in 1932, the first accelerographs, as they were called, which were derived from the Wood-Anderson seismometer of 1925, this infamous first seismometer, was redesigned and repurposed for strong motion. And that's what this looks like here. And they were deployed, a few of them, 3 or 4 or 5 in Southern California. And within a year, 1933, the Long Beach earthquake produced what is widely considered the most influential strong motion records, the first influential strong motion record, because it fundamentally changed engineering understanding of ground shaking. So Nicholas Heck, who was head of the USC&GS, noted that the records showed much greater acceleration than had ever been thought likely to occur in Southern California. So it's kind of amazing if you think about it. US engineers went to Japan in 1929, and by 1933, Congress passed law to fund a government program, and they were successfully did what they set out to do. Imagine that happening today. Nevertheless, despite this obvious importance that everyone agreed on, these early instruments were very large. They were about the size of a large desk, and they were expensive, and so they weren't deployed very easily. So the network growth did not really grow, and it slowed for decades. And it really wasn't until 40 years later, which is noted in this 1971 review that I referenced here, that a new compact instrument, the Kinemetrics SMA-1, was identified as the breakthrough really needed to make strong motion widespread and practical. And that, of course, assessment proved correct. We all know the SMA-1 became the global standard due to its reliability and, most importantly, its low cost, which was $2,000 in 1971, which is roughly $16,000 today. And I will say that the SMA-1's predecessors, its grandchild, we'll say, currently sells for about $5,000 to $6,000, the Etna 2. So our technology is getting smaller and cheaper, as it should be. Okay, so now that instrumentation is economically feasible, the next hurdle was to get widespread adoption, to get it all over, not only on the ground, but in structures. And that meant making it mandatory. So building codes began requiring instrumentation in taller buildings and large structures, and typically calling for 3 accelegraphs at the base, mid-height, and roof, shown here. LA was one of the first, but many other municipalities, mostly along the US West Coast, shown here on the map, quickly followed. And today there's about 20 municipalities that have building code instrumentation requirements. And the SMA1 led the way because they were simple self-contained units that essentially bolted to the floor, shown in this photo, of a recorder in a room that well, has more electrical outlets than is probably needed. But it's a modern, recent photo. And our last tally at Kinemetrics, which was done maybe 10 years ago, we counted about 300 buildings. There we go. Mostly in SoCal, but in every of the municipalities that have currently operated these and maintaining these instruments, not just SMA1s, but a good handful still do. So the requirements for these building codes did not evolve much since then. They're pretty much the same. And as a result, the instruments are pretty much the same too. They remain standalone, isolated systems with little coordination or shared value in the big picture. And that limitation is why broader networked programs will become necessary. And that turning point, or the inflection point, came, as it often does, at a very high cost, the 1971 San Fernando earthquake, which caused widespread damage, collapsed freeways, damaged hospitals, and significant ground deformation. And in direct response to this event, California passed some landmark measures, namely the Hospital Safety Act, the Alquist zoning program, and the creation of coordinated strong motion instrumentation program. And that is what CSMIP is, the California Strong Motion Instrumentation Program, which is operated by the California Geological Survey. And its mission is straightforward: to collect high quality earthquake data for engineering and scientific use through a statewide network of strong motion instruments. And today, that network includes nearly 1,400 stations across California. Most of them are ground stations, but many buildings and other lifeline structures like bridges and dams. And what you see here is the footprint of all these stations throughout California, across the state, and especially in high seismic and urban areas. In the past few years, Kinemetrics has been awarded over $25 million in contracts to support upgrading this system. And this included hardware and services. So this slide here is showing some of the hardware that was delivered, almost 1,000 strong motion recorders. And in parallel, CSMIP is also adopting, it's not shown here, but they're adopting Antelope, which is part of our Aspen platform, showed in one of our platforms page, and it's being deployed for real-time data acquisition from 500 stations. So I bring this up because, well, first, that was the hardware, and this is the services side of the projects that we're doing. And we're currently upgrading so-called CRA buildings, and they're called that because starting in the 1970s, they were originally instrumented with analog film-based CRA systems, which is the same generational technology as the SMA ones, but for indoor buildings, not just ground stations. And in the 1990s, this set of critical buildings, about 70 of them, shown distributed throughout here, they were upgraded to digital serial-based instruments with dial-up modems for remote access. So in the beginning, they were very similar to the building code, standalone. We had to go there. Engineers had to go there and get the data. Then the 90s, they turned to digital dial-up modems to retrieve the data. And now in the 2020s, is kind of the third generation update. And now we're installing the high resolution network-based systems with real-time data communication. So it is interesting to note that the life cycle of each of these generations lasts about 20 to 25 years. And so this isn't just a simple upgrade of hardware. It really is a generational shift from standalone instruments to centrally managed networks. And as an example, in Italy, we're actually running a very similar network of strong motion, running a strong motion network, which is operated by the Department of Civil Protection, DPC. And the network is called RAN, shown here. So there are over 700 stations in Italy, and about 530 of them are from Kinemetrics, and the rest are from other manufacturers. And they're deployed all across the country, but they're all managed centrally using Kinemetrics Aspen platform, with local support from our oh, there it is. Sorry about that, but they're all managed local support from GeoVis, who's our local partner, shown here. So what is notable about this is that hundreds of stations are operated with near over 99% station availability by only 7 people. Unfortunately, Italy is actually the exception, not the rule. Most large public strong motion programs rely on a mix of open source or in-house tools for network management. And so here I'm showing kind of a list of the many publicly funded strong motion programs. And it's not exhaustive list, but it's many of the big ones. And they operate coordinated networks at regional or national scales with similar objectives and constraints. But in most cases, the underlying approach hasn't fundamentally changed. They still rely on fragmented, internally developed open source tools for collecting the data and disseminating it. Okay, so that's kind of the current landscape of strong motion monitoring. And now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to look at how emerging technologies might change this landscape. And one of the developments that is putting pressure on this current model is the emergence of low-cost MEMS-based accelerometers. And there's a wide range of efforts. This is a very busy table, and I don't expect everyone to read it, but it kind of summarizes the range of efforts, which are both academic, community-based, and commercial. And the common theme is that the sensor, the hardware, is much cheaper and simpler deployment, and they use existing communication infrastructure like the Wi-Fi, internet, or cell network. So the idea is that it opens the door to much higher density of instrumentation than than these public programs have been able to traditionally deploy and manage. So the question isn't whether or not this technology exists or is it uh, uh, specified correctly, but it's how would something like this fit into large public strong motion programs, how they operate. So we looked at that as a from an industrial point of view. We looked at these large programs and tried to figure out, well, what do they have in common in terms of their primary objectives and operational constraint. And we thought if we want to understand how MEMS or similar technology fits into these systems, we need to do this to evaluate it. So again, I'm not going to read all the information here, but you can summarize the core objectives of strong motion monitoring programs by these three lists. Establishing the authoritative engineering data that is used for research and science and is historically consistent. Rapid post-event products like shake maps, supplying shake maps for emergency services. And kind of a newer objective is to support real-time services like earthquake early warning. Many of these networks are core partners for earthquake early warning systems. And so that's a different type of data flow that needs to be absorbed. So those are, again, not an exclusive list, but kind of three common objectives. And the operational constraints, a little bit more straightforward. There's institutional organizational constraints. There's resource constraints, which we all know, money, staffing, etc., and technical constraints. So this is the one we're most familiar with, which is, quality of data, formatting, standardization, compliance, all those things that make the data high quality that can be shared and used over time. Okay, so now that we know how these operate, we can, at a very high level, look at what approaches they could be, how low-cost technologies could be implemented into these existing networks and operations. And we came up with three different approaches, and they range in levels of integration and governance. So they each come with trade-offs in data quality and cost, scalability, operational complexity. But in practice, achieving the performance and reliability required for public strong motion programs still requires significant infrastructure and investment. So let me just say that this work, I'm not meant to go into the full analysis here, but we do have a paper that's going to be presented at the European Conference of Earthquake Engineering in Berlin. But the big picture finding was that, low upfront costs for MEMS hardware doesn't necessarily translate into lower system operation and output. But there are conditions that can make it achievable depending on very approach-specific enabling requirements. So again, I just share this with you and say if you want to know more details about how, from an industrial point of view, how large public strong motion networks can be disruptive by low-cost MEMS-based accelerometers, that's coming. Okay, now if you allow me, I'll shift gears one more time to briefly touch on how strong motion instrumentation performs during fires, which is a realistic post-earthquake hazard that could contaminate data, make it unuseful. So again, sorry, this work comes from cooperation with CFS 10 project at UC San Diego, and it's a full-scale 10-story shake table experiment. And I am not going to go into the extent of this landmark project, just that we had a small part of it. But if you want to know more about the project, there are many papers, including one coming up in the U.S. National Earthquake Engineering Conference in Portland in July. One of the things we looked at was all different types of sensors, including traditional strong motion and other types of sensors together, and compare how they work at the full scale. And that paper presentation will be published there. So when the team was done with shaking the building and doing the main experiments, then we got to have a little fun and set it on fire. And so you can see here, there was a room on the 9th level that was lit on fire. And this was our experiment setup. Using this opportunity to kind of observe how instrumentation behaves, we had two, one protected and one unprotected. And we didn't expect the instruments to survive a fire, but we wanted to see how long they would survive and provide useful data. So I'll walk you through this a little bit. This graph at the bottom shows time. So the started at 10 a.m. and went for about a half an hour. And this is the accelerations measured. And so this, in the beginning of the few 10 minutes, this was the PI walking around. So he was the last one inspecting, making sure everything was okay and ready to go. And this is the point of ignition at 10:20. And then he scattered and it was quiet. And then things started happening. And this point right here is, I think, this point here where it reached something like 631 degrees at the ceiling, but only 100 degrees or exceeded the temperature of the sensor. I think what we did, yeah. So we smoothed out the graph and zoomed into just this part here to explore, what was going on. And we see the channels start to drift as the temperature rises, and eventually the unprotected sensor failed, and the protected sensor continued on until it failed. And here's the aftermath. And again, not to go into too many details, but there is another paper where we talk exactly what happened and what this means in terms of data fidelity after a fire potential. Okay. Okay, so that was I see I'm kind of slow on time, so I will speed up. That was my background about strong motion, and now I'll go into case studies. And we've got a few. I'm going to first talk about non-damaging earthquakes, which is unusual because typically strong motion is focused on damaging earthquakes because we want to know how damage happens. And then we'll get into OASIS Plus for hospitals and tall buildings. Okay, so non-damaging earthquakes, well, reactions from earthquakes that are non-damaging, that could be large but very distant or small, they're scary, they have a negative impact. And that's seen here in 2013. There was a couple earthquakes in southern Iran that caused mass evacuations in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, across the Gulf, really. And uh, not only were the city out of work for a few hours, but the resulting economic disruption was was very large. And these earthquakes didn't just um, you know lose money or cause economic impact. They led to unsafe conditions because you could have panic crowds. And luckily, this earthquake occurred in April and not August, where the public could be exposed to pretty harsh environments. But this isn't unique to Dubai because they have very tall buildings and now they're starting to feel earthquakes hundreds of kilometers away. It happens in every in US in earthquake country too. So here's a recent examples from the US where a brand new hospital was evacuated after a Ridgecrest earthquake, and Salt Lake City Airport was shut down for a few hours um, because of the Salt Lake City earthquake. And the reason why both of these facilities shut down was because of a pipe burst. And the question I often ask is, if it wasn't immediately preceded by an earthquake, would a pipe break and this level of flooding warrant closing the entire hospital and medevacing patients to other hospitals and diverting flights for 6 hours? I don't think so. The reason why this was done is because of the uncertainty, because you just don't know what happened, how bad the damage is. And again, this happens all over the world of economic loss. And so the first unnecessary economic loss. So the first thing we looked at was, or try to understand why this happens. And so we did a methodical assessment of this risk of economic loss. And well, I'll go through this pretty quickly because, again, this is another paper, but yet an older one. And we looked at a bunch of different earthquakes that had reported mass evacuations, but then little to no damage of any sort of structural infrastructure damage was reported. And we found there's two groupings, large but very distant, or moderate, uh, you know, not too strong shaking, but strong enough to be scary. So we looked at different cities uh, and to try to get an assessment of the hazard. And here's kind of Dubai. So the number of earthquakes that in the last 20 years fall into one of these categories and tally them. And we did that for many cities, and our focus area was Europe and Middle East. And so the idea here was to kind of figure out what are the contributing factors and come up with a better understanding, or at least qualitatively understanding the risk. So you can see, and just looking at the hazard, Athens, Greece seems to be at most risk for uh, these types of events, at least in the past 20 years. But then we thought about the exposure, right? Because risk is hazard times exposure times vulnerability. And in order to suffer from unnecessary economic disruption or downtime, I have to have a big city, right? And it has to have a lot of economic activity. So we tally that too. Uh, and also another part of the exposure was tall buildings, especially for the large but distant earthquakes. The taller the buildings, the more um, likely there will be mass evacuations because of the feeling of the building moving for so long. So we didn't make an assessment saying this city is more risky than the other. It was more about kind of just systematically assessing it but we got stuck at the vulnerability because that's the big $1 million question. What is the vulnerability? What makes a city more vulnerable to overreaction and unnecessary mass uh, evacuations and shutdowns? So at this point, we could switch it around and say, well, what is the capacity to prevent unnecessary shutdowns and mass evacuations? And as unsatisfying as it is, it's social preparedness and rapid information uh, and rapid response by decision makers. So this led to our kind of concept of earthquake business continuity. How can we enable better information dissemination and better coordinated actions from decision makers to curb the overreaction? And our solution to that was OASIS Plus, which is our technology platform that is designed to provide these tools and information needed before, during, and after an earthquake to minimize the impact. And the components are, we break down to 4 components: like data acquisition, the traditional sensors and recorders that tell us how much a building actually moved, for example. And then there's second component is the real-time alarm and reporting, which converts that data into more useful information by telling us how much is too much if the building moved this much, but how much is too much that we need to actually do something. And then the third component is, okay, if we do need to do something, what do we do? There has to be response procedures that are trainable and repeatable, but they're not one size fits all. They're very customized to organizations, capacities, and culture, and all that. And then finally, there was a communication platform to centralize the command and control of the whole situation and control, and higher situational awareness, but also solve that problem of getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Okay. How am I doing on time? I think I got another maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think we can go until 11 or 10
Okay.
your time.
Perfect. So this is my very complex spaghetti figure that shows OASIS Plus in a nutshell. And I've got a couple slides that shows this in different ways. But thinking about the 4 components, right? The instrumentation for a single building, in this case, we are showing the Dubai World Trade Center as an example. The first component is the sensors, the instrumentation, the data recorder, the strong motion. This is what strong motion instrumentation is, right? Then the second piece is the alarm, right? Setting up, first understanding the building and doing a full performance evaluation to know how much the building can move before a certain level of response would be required, right? And then once that thresholds are reached, how to activate those levels of response. And so there are alarm panels that can be read by on-site operators, like a BMS room or a nuclear power plant, that kind of thing. Also send out reports that could be technical for engineers or more executive summary style for emergency managers. So displaying the trigger for what is the level of response that is needed for this event. And then the third part was the response plan, which is, okay, how do we make the determination that there could be a safety concern and warrant an evacuation? Because the goal is to not evacuate, to not shut down unless you absolutely have to. And no sensor no single or handful of sensors is able to tell you that without, a human at this point, visual inspection and making that assertion of safety. Also, because a lot of evacuations don't happen because of structural response, but because of non-structural impacts. And then the final piece is the mobile the mobile app that allows for two-way communication between the users and the management, and then the manager dashboard. And I've got a few more slides that shows how these work. So the best way to show how Oasis Plus works, I think, is to go through a user journey. So here's an example. Okay, obviously before anything happens, there's emergency preparedness, there's training, there's outreach, etc. Right? Then the earthquake strikes.
Oh,
And
Derek, just one thing. We have a fire alarm here in my office, so I have to evacuate. I'll
oh,
connect with
geez.
my mobile phone in a couple minutes. It's
Okay.
probably one of the
Uh,
labs they had their
well, I hope
battery.
it's just an alarm and it's not a real fire.
All right, please continue. I have to drop
I
off. I will connect with
sure.
my phone.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
Well, that's a bit disconcerting, but hopefully it's just an alarm. Um, and I'm sure Pierre will uh, edit out this for the recording, maybe. We'll see. Okay, so back to the user journey for an earthquake. With fire, it's very easy, right? There's an alarm, you evacuate, whether you want to or not. You should. That's the right action. But for earthquakes, it's not the right action. You don't evacuate. That's actually the most dangerous thing you could do is run out of the building during shaking, right? You drop cover and hold on. And then the decision needs to be made, do I evacuate or not? And that decision is not easy. Maybe you just do. You just evacuate. The shaking is stopped, and to be safe, you evacuate. Many people do, but you're still stuck with the decision. Now what? Is it safe to go back in? Well, in large earthquakes, many cities won't let you go back in until these buildings are declared safe by their programs, which I go into quite a bit in this presentation. But that this whole system, Oasis Plus, is designed to empower facility owners, to make that decision independently. And the idea is that they are in conjunction with the authority having jurisdiction, so that they are deputized to fully automate their occupancy and not rely on city engineers alone. All right, that's actually a pretty good segue, but let's go back. So earthquake strikes. Hopefully before the earthquake strikes, you'll get the earthquake early warning noticed. And of course, earthquake early warning is great. It tells you to prepare. It can activate things like open elevator doors or slow trains or what have you. But for buildings, really, it gets people to stop what they're doing and brace, right? Then the shaking comes and you drop cover and hold as you're supposed to. And if you have the Oasis Plus mobile app, you will get the alert right after the earthquake or learning warning stops, because now you're in the earthquake, reminding you on what to do, remind you of your situation. And while you're under the table holding on, thinking, is this going to get worse or not? You can check in. You can let everyone know, or let the management know where you are. And so that is through the mobile app allows you to select your floor and check in on the floor plan. The shaking eventually stops, and then the system will send the event report. We call it a safe report, and that'll go to the management and the engineering team, and they will process that and start their decision making. And at that point, the manager, the decision manager or decision maker, we call the manager, who could be on site or off site, will start to receive all this information, the safe reports, the check-ins from all the people who also can report hazards if they see, potential hazards. And if it's warranted, the management can deploy inspection teams, field inspection teams. So people trained to do safety checks. And these checks are also included in the app for qualified personnel that can go around and make and perform the checks and determine an ATC 20 style safety assessment. And finally, all that information, that situational awareness allows the manager to make the final decision. Do we evacuate or shut down, or do we continue business as usual? And then of course, after every event, there's a debrief, there's a document and debrief, and Oasis Plus does a lot of that for you by compiling a report of what happened from the start of the earthquake through all the information to the end. And that's how we learn and become better prepared and avoid unnecessary urban disruption. Okay, I got 4 minutes. I'm just going to go through and show some examples of Oasis Plus. Here's some of our clients that have some level of Oasis Plus. And here's one of our first early adopters, the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. It's a very large, if not the largest, military healthcare facility, serving 500,000 people. And so they have a very elaborate system that has evolved over the years. And this shows kind of the sensor layout. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 separate unique buildings that are monitored. And during that Ridgecrest event, they also received a report, and they received 2 types of reports. One, the safe report saying, the building shook, but weakly. So people felt it, but there's no damage. And then they also have a larger campus-wide view, which is shown there. And some more technical things like seismic gaps. Was there any pounding, which we can tell from the same instrumentation. Burj Khalifa is one we always like to talk about, which was a while ago. This article was published 2017, maybe. But the Burj Khalifa was constructed in 2019 or 2009 and was instrumented by Notre Dame and Samsung and CPP with a quite elaborate SHM system. Then in 2015, Kinemetrics and the Dubai municipality offered to install a strong motion monitoring system. And that's what we did. And so again, it's very similar as we did for all the other buildings. But you can see in 2018, we moved, doesn't show up, but there is the highest sensor we did was at level 160 M3, but then in 2018, we moved it all the way up to the very tip of the top. And there's a picture of me making sure it's there, and there it is at the top. Interesting thing about Burj Khalifa is they're monitoring the movement of the tip 24/7. And here's kind of a snapshot of what the Burj Khalifa is drawing in the clouds. Its tip is kind of making this nice loop, which is almost reminds you of this desert flower that the Burj Khalifa, supposedly the architects designed it after. But why are they doing that? Well, mostly it's not earthquake related. It's not wind. Well, it could be wind related, but really it's at any given moment there are people outside the Burj Khalifa either washing windows or changing light bulbs. And they needed a way to tell if the building was moving in a way that was unsafe, that they had to not, call people in. And so currently they are using this strong motion monitoring system to track the total displacement of the building and make decision on whether or not to allow people to go out. Okay, that's time. Oh, look at that. I made it all the way to the end perfectly. So, I guess now we haven't got Babak back yet, but I can take a look at the questions and see if I can
I am
answer
back.
any. Ah, he's back. Okay. Q&A. So I don't think I have access to see all the questions. Maybe you do. But if not, please feel free to enter any questions.
I also don't see questions here, maybe because I'm not a host, but I can start asking you a question.
Well, let's do this. Let me enter a question and see if you can see my question.
I can see that.
Okay, so it isn't that it doesn't work, it's that there are no questions on it. That's fine. Okay.
All right. So let me ask you a question, which I think some people may find it uh, useful as well. So we do have a bunch of academics and users of seismic sensors here. So if you wanted to consult, let's say, junior faculty or people who have projects doing it for the first time or second time, they want to put together a monitoring system. What are the questions you would ask them to come up with the optimal solution for them? For example, the range of amplitude, range of frequency, budget, noise floor,
Yeah.
resolution. Which of them I think is more important? Where would you start, and how would you guide them to make that decision, whether like what kind of solutions, what kind of sensors, what kind of
Yeah.
systems to put together?
Actually, that's a good question. Maybe I'll show this. So the first question is always, what is the objective? If it's, like you said, young academic faculty, then most likely the objective is to collect data and do some research. It's not our where we shine, where Kinemetrics shines, is in long-term permanent monitoring, putting up systems that are going to last 20, 25 years. And so that may not be right appropriate. If the objective is more like we want to deploy rapidly on some bridges, collect some data and move to a different bridge, then we can start to talk about what packaging is important. But the good thing is that no matter what the application is, long-term, temporary, or whatnot, there's the single technology, the FBA accelerometer can do it all. It can measure very strong shaking, and it can also capture very light amplitude, low frequency, ambient vibration type as well. So I would say rather than invest in something that is specifically targeted towards your individual objective right up front, having something that can meet multiple objectives is worthwhile too. So that leads us to the second point, is the budget. Obviously, if there is very, very tight budget, then perhaps a system of this quality, of this reliability is not there. So best to start asking before you have the budget so that you can ask for the right amount of budget if you want this caliber of a system.
And there, can you highlight why would someone, so you mentioned one of them that like if you look for something that lasts. So my question is, why would someone spend more money on like a higher caliber system versus, and you just mentioned it in your presentation, the MEMS systems are coming with the better noise floor. They are coming close to 0 hertz, which is like improved from piezoelectric ones, competing with force balance. Why would
Right.
someone invest in a high quality rather than an average quality system? Or in one case, it's not, I understand it's not always the best scenario, but for some cases, I want you to highlight maybe what cases would it be worth to spend the extra money to go with a higher quality system.
Yeah, and so I already mentioned the first case is if this is a program that is meant to last a long time and span not just years of data collection, but also different people, like different levels of resources as government programs wax and wane with their, number of people they have there. So having a consistent, technology and data flow that is the same is critical for government funded programs to remain operational long term, right? They can't redesign their procedures and processes every time there's new technology. And this is the reason why it takes so long for them to adopt new technologies, because it's not just the technology, it's the operations, it's the process. So that's the one example. Another example, if we look at, let's see, where is it? Yeah, if one example in the strong motion world is this idea of supplemental densification, so that, okay, we have our backbone, we have our backbone of strong motion instruments, but they're very expensive to buy up front. So, and we need to densify in the cities to get a better granularity. So the idea is, should we densify with the low-cost MEMS, which we can buy a bunch of? And that's a great question. And we think that, yeah, that's a good option, but it has to be done correctly, because, again, that data needs to be taken care of and consumed and then publicly provided, in their way. So, and that actually tends to be more costly than the sensors themselves, the whole deployment, not just installation, but the deployment. And so that's what we're looking at with here is, well, what if government companies or government institutions just buy the service and pay a commercial company to deploy the sensors and run the sensors, and then they just get the data and provide it for public. And that, there are some examples of that. And we analyzed that. And again, I didn't go into too much details here, but yeah. And then I guess to answer the question, if you have like noise floor and sample rate, and those technical requirements tend to not be what controls procurement. It really is, how is it going to work? How are you going to power it? And is it going to be safe? Like those practical, in my experience, those practical things always outweigh any savings you get by, oh, we don't need 24 bits, let's go down to 18 bits.
I think that's a very good point. And a lot of times you end up spending much more on labor and like getting together things, and like the sensors cost would be a fraction of the total project cost. That I think going a little bit higher or lower on that, like it's in the big picture is not that big percentage.
Yeah,
But thank you.
actually,
I think that was helpful what you mentioned for me too.
well, you reminded me of something. I'll be really fast. I know there's this effort of densification means a large number of sensors. And the problem with deploying a large number of sensors is you have to still that's that cost that you just said. There's a cost of deployment. And so let's say a MEMS sensor costs 1/4 of a typical FBA sensor. That doesn't mean you can install 4 times as much at the same price, because 4 times the installations is may dwarf the savings.
Yep.
Yep.
We do have actually one question from Ricardo. And first of all, thank you for the interesting presentation. And then question is, what is the next step in large-scale seismic monitoring?
Yeah, so I believe the next step is moving to real time. And this is exemplified by the Italian Natural Storm Motion, which is very well coordinated. And we have a very small team that goes to sites twice a year. Not a bad job for them to travel the Italian countryside and go visit these sites twice a year. But the fact that they can have such a dynamic network and be managed with again maybe a very expensive upfront solution, but then long-term low operation costs. I think that's the future. And it's not saying that, okay, it's just the same old instrumentation. Having open-ended data centers that can collect data from different types of sensors and is always there. Most of the reasons why strong motion networks today don't have a bunch of displacement sensors and this and that is because they don't know how to adopt that into their data flow and dissemination approach, right? There's things that are being done that this would not work for, and they have to reconcile that. So having a open dynamic data center, I think that is the future for large scale public funded monitoring.
Very good. We are at 11:13. We can have one more question if something pops up in the Q&A. I don't see anything. Oh yeah, there is one more. So Asmit Roy, Borman. My next question was going to be about multimodal data fusion with different sensors. Is that something you guys have looked into? Is it?
So if I'm reading it correctly, you meant like different types of sensors within the same station. So like a building have accelerometers and displacements and strain gauges and wind and all that, which is I think what I touched on before about how that's all technically feasible and easily done on a single research project like UC San Diego. There was like 1,000 sensors of all various modal types, and they were integrated no problem for that one project. But to do that on a scale of a country and repeat it in every building and do it with limited funds is another story. So I think if that process gets codified, then it's not a problem. It's the will. It's not the technology that's the problem. It's the will.
All right. So, Derek, thank you very much for the nice presentation. Sorry for the snafu here. I came to the building next door. So,
Is your building on
Um,
fire? Are you okay?
the building is not on fire. Usually
Okay.
what happens is that somebody in one lab, they trigger the fire alarm and then we have to evacuate. And the fire marshal has to come physically check everything and then let us back in. But we will find out what happened in an email in the next hour or so.
Okay. Well, I'm glad everyone is safe.
All right. I'm glad I could make it to the Q&A part.
Mhm.
It was nice discussion. Thank you very much. And this video will be posted on the YouTube channel for everyone. You guys can share it. You can look at it later. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.